The film was originally slated to debut on the July 4th holiday weekend in 1989,
Mhm.
but Reitman wanted to move the release date up to a week earlier, even though they had all these reshoots and they were trying to piece together the movie. And ILM, who was doing the special effects in the movie, like they were kind of overhauled last minute with all these changes too, and they were kind of overwhelmed. So it's surprising to hear that they wanted to move it forward a week. But when they learned that there's this new film coming out called Batman that weekend, they
Oh.
just they decided to move it forward another week to June 16th.
Hmm. Which I think ended up being its downfall in a way. Like maybe it should have come out when it was originally stated.
Yeah,
But it's also like it was a different world then too, where I can imagine maybe somebody at Columbia saying, "Okay, like yeah, but it's Batman. We've all seen the '60s show. We know what this movie is going to be." Not realizing that it was going to be like a cultural renaissance.
exactly. Yeah. So I can see why they wanted to avoid that. Maybe this kind of just speaks to like it was just a crazy year because like going in the next note, 1989 was just a crazy year for cinema. It set the record for most sequels released in one year, with
Hmm.
Ghostbusters 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Karate Kid Part 3, Star Trek 4 or Star Trek 5, The Final Frontier, Lethal Weapon 2, Back to the Future Part 2. So it's just like crazy, and then some other big movies that came out, were like Uncle Buck, Honey I Shrunk the Kids, When Harry Met Sally, Dead Poets Society, Look Who's Talking, look, another baby movie, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
Batman, the granddaddy of them all. So, which kind of took the world by storm, you know?
Yeah, totally. It's funny when I think about that. I was 2 years old at the time, so I have no memory of it really. But I loved the idea of all these like fantastic movies. Like some of my favorite movies came out that year. Like Indiana Jones and Last Crusade. Batman, of course, and Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, it's just there's so much competition, and especially like back then, like it was considered the summer was considered like the blockbuster season, right? Where it was just one after another, and so many, pumping out so many of these big movies that I know this is probably going to get brought up in a few minutes too, but with Ivan Reitman because he commented on this as well. But why would you not release this movie during the Christmas holiday season? You know?
Yeah, I kind of thought that too because it's the whole movie builds up to the new year, so it would have made perfect sense for it to be either a Christmas, well, I guess yeah, a Christmas or a Thanksgiving release and capitalize on all that. It's something I think about like every New Year, like oh, this is when Vigo's coming,
Yeah,
um, and so that's but then again, it's also not uncommon because like Batman Returns did the same thing, and then years later Shazam did the same thing. That came out in April, and that was technically a Christmas movie.
right.
um, so I don't know. It's like a lot of movie producers and executives, their mindset is well the summer season is the money making season. When I think recently movies have proven that no, if the people want to go see the movie, they'll go see the movie. It doesn't matter what time of year it comes out. Like I think the first one that really kicked the door open on that one was Deadpool in February. Suddenly it's
Yes.
like oh, if people want to go see the movie, they're going to go see the movie. And because a lot of people have the weekend off or will make time to go see a movie that they want to go see. I mean, look at the success of the Batman, you know, uh, opening the first weekend in March, which is not typically a profitable time, but people wanted to go see the movie, so they went and saw the movie.
Yeah, that was a great point you made about Deadpool because I mean they were so underselling and underestimating that movie with what they were projecting and what it eventually made was
Yeah,
just mind boggling. Like more than doubled the amount that's opening weekend than what was projected. Like it was just one of the most profitable movies probably ever for them because it was
yeah.
just you know
It was a low risk high reward type of thing, but I think Fox was betting on the low, just like oh it's low risk. Like who's going to go see this, not realizing that not only you have Ryan Reynolds star power, but it's this new take on these on like the X-Men kind of, but also it looked like a good movie and people wanted to check it out. And Deadpool had been lingering in development hell for like, almost 10 years, or probably more than that at that point, you
Yeah.
know.
But as for the Ghostbusters franchise, despite the first one being the second highest grossing film of 1984 and the highest grossing comedy of all time at that time, the sequel was the eighth highest grossing film of 1989, making $67 million less than the original. In more recent years, Reitman and Murray have both stated making the sequel was not as satisfying as the original, with Reitman citing like a cultural shift to audiences wanting darker films like Batman, also releasing, like I said, a Christmas movie in the summertime, and the 5-year period in between the films causing a little bit of lost momentum. In 2016, a reboot featuring an all-female cast, directed by Paul Feig, titled Ghostbusters, was released. And then in 2021, Ivan Reitman's son Jason directed a sequel to the sequel, Ghostbusters Afterlife, featuring some of the original cast of Ghostbusters 2. Was there anything other that kind of stood out to you at all?
I did know that it didn't make as much that the first one did. Like you can chalk it up to stiff competition and or whatever. I think him saying, "Well, yeah, audiences wanted darker movies." I don't like when directors have takes like that, because to me it just feels lazy. It's like, well, no, if you have a good movie, like that's what people want to see. So I think that's doing it to service. I think probably what killed it more than anything was the gap, because there was the cartoon and everything, but audiences were clamoring for another one. And it's so bizarre to me that they thought of the first one as being standalone. When I think about it, I'm like, yeah, but there's so much story potential there. Why would you, even just after the fact, not have thought, well, hey, what could we do with a part two? So it's strange to me that they were like, oh, it's just this one and we're done. Like really? Like this had so much story potential. It could have been so interesting, and they could have done, like the next one could have come out two or 3 years later, Ghostbusters in Detroit or Los Angeles or San Francisco, whatever. So it's sort of bizarre to me that they didn't think that didn't occur to them. What, other than the first draft, I guess, being in Scotland, which is like
Yeah.
way too far left. But yeah, I don't know. But like I said, I've always appreciated the movies as a pair. So I didn't have the time difference to have like a diminishing returns on how much I love the second one. So for me, it was like, oh, there's two of them. And for the longest time, I never understood why they never made a third one. I didn't even realize that it was less liked than the first one until I was in my 20s,
Yeah.
when I would hear people, there was like a joke on the Big Bang Theory that they saw that they thought they found a Ghostbusters script, and then they were like, "Oh, it's Ghostbusters 2," and they throw it away. And I was like, "That's not funny. That movie's great. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So I never quite subscribed to that theory. But it also boils down to, I can speculate all day. I also wasn't there. I mean, technically I
True.
was, but I was 2 years old learning how to walk. So I don't get the, like, well, what so we can speculate all day on why it didn't hit the mark the way the first one did. Whereas to me, I was just like no, I think if I say Ghostbusters is my favorite movie, like Ghostbusters 2 is, like, Ghostbusters is a 10, Ghostbusters 2 is probably like a 9.